44, Three Bros Podcast.
Indeed.
Where Chad gets triggered.
Triggered a lot
every
today.
week, writes them down, and shares them with everybody. So we're looking forward to it today.
Over-opinionated and under-informed.
Oh my gosh, that seems like the perfect combination. That seems like the perfect combination. I feel like any other way would
stop describing the American media.
Media. So
Chad, I need to look at what happened at this press conference. I have not seen the video. I am completely ignorant of what occurred the past couple of days. I want to hear it from the prism of Chad. Go.
So before we get into the press conference, we have to talk about a couple things that sort of set the stage for this press conference a bit. Recently, there were 12 indictments handed out by a grand jury for Russian agents.
When did this happen?
I want to say it was a couple days before the meeting or a few days before.
Last Friday,
meeting.
That's correct. Last Friday, yes.
Okay. Last Friday. And people are a little dubious on the timing of that. They think that the FBI was trying to force Trump's hand because they were like, why are you meeting with Putin considering everything that's going on? I don't know. Maybe there's something
I want
to
to clarify what that means. Do these people think that they are fake indictments and put out to distract, or were they indictments that were always
of course they're indictments? Come on now.
Well, I don't know.
Of course they're real indictments.
Tell me otherwise about the FBI. I don't know.
Here's the thing: the proceedings for whatever that is going to go on regardless. But I think they made that information made to the public at that time to put a little pressure on Trump, to at the very least press Putin on this, because like Obama never met with Putin. No sitting. I mean, it's been a while since any sitting president has actually sat down and talked with Putin. All right, so that's fact number one, right, Caleb? Fact number two. For some strange reason, the meeting between Putin and Trump was just Putin and Trump, and I believe two translators, one from either side of the.
So that doesn't strike me as immediately strange, except for the fact that he just came from the reason why this feels like a bigger deal to me too, is you just come from basically countries that were supposed to be are supposed to be and are still in a lot of our eyes the strongest allies that we have economically and politically, and you basically told them that they can all go fuck themselves, and then you don't meet with any of them one-on-one like that at all. That's not what happens.
No. I think even despite the NATO summit, it is very strange for two leaders like that to meet without any sort of advisors, for it to be made very private and personal like that. It's strange. I think that's strange, especially when you consider all of the murky water that already exists with Russia. Why would you do that? That just looks horrible.
The way Putin was sitting in his seat, straight thugging too. Like, wow, just laid back, just insane,
anyways,
dude.
Yeah,
the optics of it were just like incredible. There's no other way to describe it. It was wow. I was pretty floored.
So considering those two things, Trump and Putin come out and they do this press conference, and they both talk for a little bit, and they field a couple questions from the journalists, and they talk about like a myriad of things. Syria. They talk about Ukraine. They talk about oh god, I can't even remember the other things because it was just so overshadowed by just that one thing. So eventually it comes time for the journalists to field questions, and one journalist, I forget the exchange that began it, but essentially he point blank asked Trump whether or not he thinks Russia had anything to do with interfering in the 2016 general election. And Trump gives this weird, like, no answer, where he kind of just splits the middle, and he kind of sides with Putin, kind of tells the intelligence agencies of America to go fuck themselves, basically. I mean,
someone's got to be easy with their breathing.
Yeah, you got to stop breathing directly into the mic, brother.
Sorry.
But essentially, that's what He just refuses to even press Trump. His body language during the press conference was very non-confrontational. He says he panders to Putin, like panders to this guy.
And then openly puts Putin's assessment on, or even astoundingly enough, above the opinion of our own intelligence agencies on the 2016 election. And I was saying this to Chad. Look, I feel like there's still an argument to be made that, and I was saying this to John yesterday too, that like Trump feels like when we talk about the fact that they meddled, it makes his win like delegitimized, and he doesn't like that. But he's got to understand, like, dude, get over it. Like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't even matter if it somehow, I highly doubt, but if it doesn't even matter if it somehow delegitimizes his presidency, I don't know how it would. It's not like we can go back and change anything. Like, he's going to be the president for the next 2 years, and he needs to make a choice. Like, be a little bitch and like do nothing, or, you know, buck up and actually fight back. Like, do something about it and put your ego on hold for like 5 seconds and make sure that our, you know, democracy isn't being meddled in. It's just astounding. Good night. It's
Good
once
night.
again, it's the way that he treats certain members of NATO, especially members viewed as large allies, a certain way, juxtaposed in against the way that he treats Putin. It's like it's night and day, and everyone just is sitting here going, "Why? Like, why is that the case?" And I posted that link, and just start scrolling in the 1980s.
Oh, are you saying in terms of Trump's involvement in Russia?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to.
And I told you, the explanation to me that makes the most sense is that he has always just been friendly with Russian people and has had a good business relationship with them over the years, so sees them in a positive light because he's worked with them the most, maybe, in business deals over the years. I don't think he owes anybody any money or anything crazy like that. I don't think so.
Right.
I just think he has an affinity for Russians because he's done a lot of business with them over the years, you know, as opposed to railing against these trade deals, and that's like part of his image now. Like, I don't know. It just,
I'd be more inclined to agree with that. I even though this was just a ridiculous and shameless display, I still don't think Trump personally tried to work with Russian agents to influence the election. I don't believe that. I don't think Trump is that risky and ambitious, I guess. I mean, that's just I just don't see Trump as doing that. But that still doesn't dismiss the fact that he literally sided with Vladimir Putin over his own country's intelligence agencies. And it's still kind of up in the air whether or not Trump is going to follow through with the indictments and actually try and get those 12 people extradited from the Russian Federation. So,
well, Trump president or not, they wouldn't have been extradited.
They were asked that at the press conference. Both Putin and Trump were asked that. And Trump goes, well, you're going to have to defer to Putin for his answer. And basically Putin says, no, it's not going to happen unless you let us come in and talk to your people. It's like Trump, he just looked like such a small little man next to Putin. Putin just preached from the pulpit when it was his turn to speak during that press conference, and Trump didn't put any pressure on him. He just panders, man. It was so sad. Why insist to meet with Putin if you have no intention of actually trying to be a leader? It's just
didn't bring up at all the extremely suspicious over the years cases of Putin's biggest political rivals and critics dying
Oh my God, I know. I mean,
Somehow.
Putin's he's an authoritarian thug. I mean, recently 2 people were poisoned on British soil, and we're fairly certain that it was Russia. And Trump's over here meeting with this guy and just being buddies with him. Like,
The
what are
thing
you
is,
Let's
doing?
look at
is
it
where
from
they-
a different prism here,
they
if I may,
critics?
at this point.
China
And
through a
that
new
is-
prism.
And that is,
Were they critics?
you at the beginning, you guys said, what? No, I shouldn't say no, but no U.S. president has really sat down and talked with Putin in such a manner, right? But Putin
Cannot confirm.
never, right? Sure, in such a public manner, like I said, Putin would never
Bush
do
may
that.
have.
Okay, but Putin would never do that with anybody who would sit there and rebuke him in front of him, right? It's one thing to talk shit about somebody behind their back. It's another thing to sit in front of them and do it. In my opinion, is the reason why Putin would do a presser like this is because he knows that Trump wouldn't say anything.
But Trump.
That's why he would do the presser in the first place.
Of course, but that means Trump has no self-awareness in how this is going to look. Apparently, there are reports that after this press meeting, after this press conference, Trump wasn't even aware of the storm of controversy that was happening from both the right and the left back in the United States for almost a full 24 hours until he realized and he goes, "Oh shit, what do we do to fix this?" Like he clearly has no self-awareness to how that was going to look. He looked like an absolute pussy on that stage. For a lack of a better
That's putting it
Yeah,
mildly.
I would say that's because of the people he puts around him. Right? Let's be honest. He's the type of guy that
No,
puts yes.
dude.
Whoa, he's the type of guy that puts yes men around him.
He is.
But here's the thing,
So
like
nobody in his staff would have the fucking nuts to sit there and be like, "Yo, you look like a pussy."
and you're right. But
It's crazy.
well, first of all,
not really.
no, I don't agree with that because go and look at his apology statement today. He barely could stumble through it, and he was like smacking the table at times, almost reading it against his wishes, as if he didn't want to read it. It's crazy, dude.
Wait, who
Somebody
Trump?
who he doesn't have influence over?
So here's the thing, Caleb. Yes, you're right. Everything.
It's
Hang on. Everything Caleb said is right. But here's the thing. It's the way that the way that he acted at this press conference compared to every single other day in this presidency, in his campaign, the way he carries himself with other leaders who are supposed to be our allies, and then all of a sudden, like with him, like you just like you have to see the press conference, man.
Here's
Can't even-
my issue.
can't even do
I get you.
justice.
I get you.
It's that
But
bad. Go
if
ahead.
we look at the Trump empire, and this might be covered in that link that you sent there recently, Cyril, right before the chat, which I kind of wish we had a little more time to go over it. But how much money, how much of the Trump fortune do you think is tied up in Russia right now?
I don't know, but I know the answer isn't zero.
Right.
So that should be alarming.
Here's what I would wonder. If I'm looking at this from the perspective of a CEO, or I don't know, let's say my personal fortune, why would I go out of my way to condemn someone who has literally the power to nationalize whatever I have in that country so that I lose all of it, everything? I wouldn't do that, which is why, in my opinion, when somebody says, "Oh, I'll work for the government for $1," or I'll I'll step
Wait a
down
minute,
as a
wait a
CEO.
minute, wait a
Hold on,
minute.
let me finish. When you do that, you're putting yourself in a position where Trump, no matter what, even if he wins the next election, he will no longer be president at some point, and he will continue to run, Trump Incorporated or whatever the hell it's called.
And who said anything about him owning a part of this economy in Russia? Like, he's backed by Russian money, but he doesn't have property in Russia.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm very sure.
But what I'm saying is how much of his wealth is tied up in such a way that if Vladimir Putin wanted to, he could make it all disappear. The Russian backing.
Not zero.
Well, right. But my question is how much? Is it 10% of his wealth? Is it
I'm starting to
50%
think it's
of his wealth?
an aggressive number. The more he acts like an idiot.
If I sit here and I say, as
You
somebody
act-
looking long term at my own life, because I know at some point I will not be the president, right?
If you act in an incriminating manner, then
But do you hear what I'm saying? Strictly from an economic viewpoint,
Sure.
Why would I go out and criticize somebody who has the ability to take away my funding, my backing, potentially my backbone into a large part of the world in which I make money?
There's a really simple, easy answer to that. Because
Okay.
you're the president of the United States, you're supposed to be representing the American people. You're supposed to be putting your personal. And this is why you're supposed to put all. Hang on.
Stop.
This
I
is why you're supposed to.
understand that. I get that. But we both agree that that's not what happens with President Trump. Yes.
Okay.
That's my point.
But we don't even have to have the conversation past that. That is such a scary,
It
terrible conflict of interest on such a level that is frightening even before he acts like he's buddy-buddy with Russia, let alone the fact that he's buddy-buddy with Russia. It literally is so incriminating what you're telling me that he should be impeached yesterday. Because he has so much conflict. This is why when you become the president, you put everything in a blind trust. He didn't do it. This is why you disconnect yourself from all private interest, because you literally head all public interest. You are mixing public and private interest. This is going to be one of the darkest parts of Trump's legacy. It's the mixing of the private and the public. It's the most. It's going to be the worst part of this whole thing with Donald Trump, because the rest of it will hang on. We'll be all right. But this mixing of him, I think I saw a number the other day, like 1 out of every 3 days, he's at a private entity of his, the Mar-a-Lago, or one of his businesses. Oh my gosh, the conflict of interests are so scary, let alone now we have to talk about that on top of the way that he acts around Russia, that he doesn't act around anybody else. It's just, if he's doing this to enrich himself, he should go to jail.
I agree with you. But what I'm saying is he doing it to enrich himself, or is he doing it to preserve the riches that he has? That's what I'm saying.
That's the same thing to me, though, because you're using your presidential influence for your own private interest. That's the most corrupt and disgusting thing anybody could do in politics.
Right, which is why I don't like when business people get into politics.
I happen to agree with that statement, but
I think business people are great advisors to politicians.
Yeah,
I do believe that, but I don't believe. Sure. If you want to become the president, if you want to become a representative of the United States of America, you need to truly disconnect yourself from every single facet of private business.
Yes,
in some way, shape, or form. And saying that my son is going to take over while I'm out and then I'll come back and do it is not truly disconnecting from that.
Right.
And merely what I'm saying is my curiosity is how much truly potential or current wealth is connected to Russia in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be not actual wealth itself, but potential future funding, investments.
Sure.
I mean, how much money did companies lose when who was it that nationalized 20 years ago, like Argentina or something, or Venezuela, just nationalized everything, said fuck you, it's ours now? How much money was lost when
I know Venezuela was pretty socialist.
Maybe it was Venezuela. I can't remember, but there was a South American country
that few years though.
Well, still, my point is that when a company nationalizes, how much money does private interest outside of that country lose? They lose everything. So I'm not sure. Everyone has the joke of prostitutes pissing on them in a Russian hotel or some shit. I don't think it's that. I think it's literally.
I don't think it's that at all.
I think it's wealth. I think Trump is smart enough to understand, oh shit, if I'm the one pissing on Russia's doorstep, I'm going to lose a lot of business opportunities.
Well, and I hear you and I agree with you, but I'm saying that is enough to impeach him, because that is enough of a conflict.
That right now, currently, what's the? I don't know. I don't know the actual law.
I understand what you're saying, and if it is legal and it's not yet illegal, fine. Let's fix it, and let's fix it yesterday.
Agreed, but I don't want to base this on semantics. I want to know what the actual.
Sure.
What it is. Sure. Is there a level of conflict of interest? Right? Because then if we go back to...
That crosses the line for me. I don't know about you. That does for me.
Well, let me ask you this. If you have a 401k, right? You work at a bank now, right? At some point, you'll invest in a 401k, or you'll have some sort of plan, right?
Sure.
To say no is kind of ridiculous. I mean,
go ahead.
That's a standard.
Sure.
Wealth
I do.
Go strategy. But anyway, my point here is let's say, Cyril, in the next 20 years, you save up $250,000 in your 401k,
Yeah.
right? And you become a politician. You become senator of New York.
Sure.
Should I hold your feet to the fire if through your 401k, through all sorts of diversified portfolios, and you're bought into this and that and this and that, I find out that you, sir, are invested in a hotel that operates in Russia?
So I just want to be clear. You're comparing $250,000 of a nest egg that a small, almost nobody has to the Trump empire and their investments in Russia. I just want to be clear. You're making that direct comparison. Is that?
Here's why. Before
I just want to. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Why? Because
Go ahead.
that is your entire wealth. I don't give a shit if your entire wealth is $10 or $100 billion. It's still your wealth, right? It still means a lot to you and your future. Yes? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Now we can talk about, right, how much of a future, right, what size of your retirement is if you're Trump. Like, you'll be fine. I get that. You're right.
Mhm.
But at the same time, that conflict of interest still exists. The difference here is that you, through your 401k, that's being invested by somebody completely disconnected from you. They could give two fucks about you and your money. What they care about is getting the best return possible, period. Whereas Donald Trump, specifically, because he's the one actually managing said deals, that's where the conflict of interest arises. So my question is where do we draw that line? And I don't. There may be a law that already draws that line. I don't know. I'm coming from a place of ignorance, but maybe somebody can lightly Google. I don't know. But my question is, I guess, ultimately is that, regardless of whether or not it's right or wrong, is that where Trump is coming from? Is that why he looks like such a puss in front of Putin and nobody else? Is that why?
I look at this timeline, right? And I think about what happened this week and just the way that he postures himself around the Russia question or being around Putin. And I just, I don't know, man. It's not good. That's
I'm
like
not saying it is.
at the very least. No, I'm not saying you are. I'm thinking about, why? Like, why? And I'm not even saying it's bad, by the way. I'm just trying to make sense of everything. And I think that Trump, in his day-to-day decision making, if he's not constrained by law to benefit himself before the American people, I think we'd be silly to think that he would be choosing to benefit anybody but himself before anybody else. So it all just leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. I know that Trump is literally taking advantage of us, like the American people, in some sort of way when I add all this up. And I just, makes me upset.
I mean, at the bottom line is
think
where
about
I
how the
completely
motherfucker
agree
probably cut
with
his
you.
own taxes. Unbelievable. Cut my taxes, bitch. Go ahead.
The spot where I completely agree with you is you've got the fucking nuts to go after NATO, to go after all sorts of people, quite frankly, on the political world stage.
Right, dude.
One guy you don't have the fucking nuts to say anything to can't be Putin.
That just, it looks weird, man.
It doesn't.
It looks weird.
It's not that it looks weird. It's weird. And I think maybe part of what we struggle with is that as a country, we've always had that access of power that we're fighting against, quote unquote, right? And and
let's not forget about why. Putin's political enemies and critics literally die very often in strange, mysterious ways. This is why we talk about Putin as if he is not good. So, I mean, we need not forget that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has.
Okay.
What?
I hope not. No, I mean, I hope not. I hope not. And I think that's why everyone's so upset the last couple of days. So there you go. I mean, you're not wrong. So I just more than anything else, all of this just fascinates me, and I kind of want to press you right before we started. You kind of started digging in. I don't want to say digging into the investigation, but I'll let you speak your piece. To you made it sound like you just wanted it to be done quickly.
Not that I wanted to be done. I mean, how? Well, let's talk about this, right? How long has this investigation been going on at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have like the number on that? I can Google it real quick. Hold on.
Probably since shortly after he got elected.
May of 2017, something like that.
2017. I'm looking at the Wikipedia for the special counsel investigation. May 2017. So
Got him.
Yep.
But I guess maybe where my perspective comes from is the fact that like I feel like I've been hearing about this since well before Trump even became president. Like I think he was barely a presidential nominee for the Republican Party when we started hearing about this stuff, right? Which would put this back to when? 2016? Mid 2016? What I want to know at this point is what do we have? Are we even close? Is there anything whatsoever? And I understand the secrecy around an investigation because, right, you don't want any stories changing or anything like that. But I think a lot of people are like, let's, if there's something going on, let's fucking hear about it already. I don't give a shit right now, and I shouldn't say it in this way, but the general feeling I feel like for a lot of people, and this is a completely opinion based, is is there something? If not, let's move on. Let's allow him to indict the people who actually did something. But what we need to know right now is, was the president aware and did he do anything? Yes or no?
So
if not, let's fucking move on and let's let the president.
If you can go ahead and click on the image that I sent you guys in the Hangouts from 538. Basically, special investigation since 1973 that resulted in charges by number of indictments and guilty pleas per week as of July 13th, 2018. And it just compares Mueller's investigation to others in history. And I think it's still technically the shortest one ever still so far.
Oh,
And
wow. Look at
the
those
bubbles-
indictments, though.
The bubbles are pretty large on his compared to others.
Yeah.
Well, the bubbles are so large on his because of how fucking bad it is, right?
Excuse me, what? Excuse me?
Go ahead.
No. It's bad? His probe is bad?
Bad as in there's a lot of indictments, yes? Yes or no?
I don't know. I'm confused. I'm legitimately confused with how you're using it.
Because nothing has happened. Nothing has come out as far as what the president has or has not done.
But
True.
it's also an investigation into the 2016 election and how it got hacked, and he just indicted 12 Russians on top of like 11 others.
I get
before.
that. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
But what we're sick and tired of fucking hearing is about Trump's connection specifically to Russia. That's what I want to know about at this point.
So you don't care about the fact that it happened?
I do. You don't listen to a word I say.
Well, no, because he is
I
indicting.
do care about it. Go ahead.
Because he is indicting the people, the Russian nationals that actively partook, right? So that means what that tells me basically is they're getting to the bottom of it. They're figuring out how they. Basically, it's important for counter cybersecurity, obviously, right? Like figuring out how it happened and making sure it doesn't happen again. So in that way, I actually get more excited that they're getting to the bottom of actually how they hacked. Trump is an idiot. I could care less about what he thinks he's doing because he's, at the end of the day, just going to make himself look dumb and make himself lose.
But
eventually.
more specifically,
so
in the
I don't
process,
care. I want us to
America
make sure
stupid
that
and making us lose. Yes.
Well, basically, what I was going to say is I want us to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that our voting process and the solid dependency on that voting process of never being hacked and like it's so like that voting process it's so important and crucial to our democracy, right? So like if tomorrow, I'm going to speculate here, if tomorrow it lots of credible sources came out and dropped a bombshell that like there could have been a lot, like let's say there could have been tomorrow they report there could have been hundreds of thousands of fake votes for Trump by Russians because they hacked into systems in 2016, right? Like that would spread like wildfire, and that would do more to destabilize our democracy than anything else could, because we're talking about delegitimizing the way that we vote people in. And when we do that, now we lose faith in it. And now, that's the kind of stuff that's like slippery slope. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's valid. That's absolutely valid. And I think what I'm expressing is just general frustration.
Sure.
Because, and this is coming from somebody that doesn't watch cable news anymore, that doesn't read a whole lot as far as current events, as far as specifically Trump. Right. If I'm frustrated, I can only imagine what people who are actively watching it and following it are right now.
Yeah.
Because I feel like anytime I do catch anything, anytime I do out of the corner of my eye or from a newspaper article, like that's what it's all about. Is this damn investigation. And I get that it's important. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah. No, I know you're not. Let's go down that road though. Like, let's say tomorrow somehow it does come out that let's not say Trump, but tomorrow it comes out that yes, Paul Manafort has been indicted and has been jailed. He's in jail right now on connections to the Ukraine and to Russian goons, and continued those connections while he was the chairman of like Trump's campaign. And there's actual connection between the campaign and Russians. What's your first response? Do you even believe it? Like,
again, it's all about evidence. And
sure.
What I think is frustrating is that, and again, I'm not well read on it. I'm just expressing general frustration that I have and that I feel, is that there's not anything right now that we know of, to my understanding, that puts Donald Trump in a position that he did something wrong.
Right.
Is he compromising America? In my opinion, yes. And I think it's because of financial reason.
Well, I'm not even going to say yes. It looks like it. I'll say that. It sure looks like it.
To me, he has. Right? I'll say it. I'm okay with saying it. To me, he has. Compromised our position. Right?
It's right there.
And I will concede 100% to you saying that whether or not our election is hacked, you're right. It's very important. If we found out our election was hacked, then Hillary Clinton would have the ability to go and sue somebody, I'm sure.
That would be terrible for our society. That would be
I agree with you. You're 100% correct. And I did not come from that perspective. My perspective came from the fact that Trump is in fact innocent of any charges. I never came from the fact that, well, even if he was guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter, because if the implication is that millions or hundreds of thousands of fake votes were submitted on his behalf or for him, what that would mean for what Hillary would have the ability to do, or the Democratic Party for that matter. Right? Where I was coming from the perspective of, in my understanding and what I see from my very tiny prism of barely any knowledge whatsoever, is that the way that this was hacked was not, to me, necessarily hacked vote for vote. Does that make sense? I'm not entirely convinced until they come out with something and I read it and I see it, that this was, to me, the way that this was hacked was something called social engineering.
Oh yeah.
To me, that is the level of hacking that I understand occurred 2016, no doubt. And to me, it occurred on both sides. Now, granted,
I haven't heard nothing more than that, but yeah,
Russia is very good at social engineering and is very good at understanding, it looks like, how to influence a public's opinion one way or the other. Right? So in this case, from what I understand, from what I saw, nobody was innocent per se in the entire election, in the entire campaign when it comes to social engineering, because although that is hacking to some degree, like that's kind of just trying to influence public idea, right? Public perspective.
Well,
Yes? Or-
as far as I'm aware,
Yeah.
in terms of Russian agents, like state agents, they were more preferential to Donald Trump, but in terms of the Democratic side, they were more preferential to Sanders.
Right.
I think a bit more of the support was skewed towards helping out Trump, and I think this is an interesting point to bring up. I don't think that they actually decided the election with whatever it is that they tried to do. I think Trump would have won regardless. I think the point that Russia interfered, period, is a problem. That's absurd.
I think we all agree
That's
on that.
disgusting. Right? Obviously.
Okay.
But
I
that being said, I don't think they actually influenced it in the positive towards Trump.
Sure. And I would say
I don't think they swayed
let's
it.
wait and see some sort of report.
You think they actually had enough of a?
I think that let's just wait and see the report. I'm not saying I do, because even if I sat here and tried to say I do, or even I don't, I couldn't. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't even know
Sure.
how to explain that. Like, how would you even find out if one changed their mind because of something? Like, that's such a hard thing to quantify. So if all the reports ever come out on it and nothing ever quantifies it, then there you go. There's your answer. But it's definitely a hard thing to quantify.
I mean, obviously, I'm shooting from the hip a bit, but I do believe, I don't believe that.
I think you're right, just because you can't quantify that. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm right that I'm shooting from the hip, or I'm right that
No, I think you're right that
All of the above.
I think you're right that
Sure.
you're not going to find out truly the right number on who actually might have changed their mind because of
Right.
sway from an outside source they otherwise wouldn't have seen. Because how do you quantify that? You can't.
Right.
That's
Couldn't
ridiculous.
one argue, though, even before the 2016 election, like that's what politicians buy TV ads for. That's what they build websites for, have Twitter accounts for. It just so happens, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far, and it can certainly change once more evidence comes out, to Cyril's point, but social engineering, the act of influencing people to get information or sway them a certain direction, is literally what politics has become the last 25 years, yes? It's becoming less about vote for me because of these things and more about, well, vote for me because that person is a shitbag. And my feeling is right now that Russia and those agents just happen to better understand how to use social media, where nobody else in the country here really had a good idea on how to do that, like, effectively. And to Cyril's point, we don't know how effective it actually was, and we probably never will know. There's no way to quantify it, right? But that's what it seems like to me. It seems like that Russia, quite frankly, it seems like right now, the DNC in the Republican Party and any other party, quite frankly, that wants to learn how to influence people's minds should study what happened. What was it that lit such a large fire? How were people able to, and I say people, but how, in theory, from my perspective, were Russian agents, if you will, or groups able to influence people's thinking in such
extremism,
a large manner? Is it extreme? Is that what did it?
A lot of it is.
So now are we going to see
won't go to extremism because of obvious reasons, and so
when it comes to 2020, right? And you're right, extremism absolutely fires people up. But when it comes to 2020, and not even 2020 for our election, but any election in the world now, do political parties now have a better handbook at trying to influence people's decision making before an election because of what we saw? Like, do we now have people had the time to study and try to understand what happened, therefore trying to apply that to their own country or to another, election process? Do you think we'll see more of stuff like this as time goes on? What are you confused on?
Your question.
My question is because everything that happens, there's always a group of people that studies it, right? Sure. There's always people who are passionate by something that happened. In this case, what I'm talking about is the social engineering conducted by not just Russians, but our political parties in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to stoke extremism, how to use extremism to get votes to your way, to your side of the team.
Apologies.
Are we going to see that increased in 2020? Are we going to see that increased in other elections in the in the Western world?
We're going to see people be less susceptible to it.
You
Hopefully.
think so?
Hopefully. I mean,
Why?
how long can you read something that is factually inaccurate and not notice that these things don't accurately describe the world as we know it? I mean, people who consume that far left or far right material that completely panders to what they already believe in, they have to start noticing the bullshit sometime, right? I mean, we're kind of a bit new to this way too much information age type deal. I'm hoping that people start getting better at being able to parse out what's true and what's not true. I mean, how many times can you be fooled before you start truly being a bit more critical about what you're consuming?
Chad, to be honest, I know a lot of dumbasses.
It's got to change. Either that or the enthusiasm will fade away. People will stop believing into these hyping up type headlines and they'll lose interest in politics. The idiots will stop participating and hopefully we'll return to a bit more of a normalcy.
What I would argue against that specifically is that although I believe you're correct, right? People lose interest. The problem is that the presidential election specifically is every 4 years, which gives you just enough time to get it out of your mind and off your palate so that when the next time comes around, you're like all fired up about it. That's what
But it's still less than half the country.
But it doesn't matter.
The last presidential election we had, there were more participating, I think, than is normal. Although I might be shooting from the hip a bit again. I don't know how many votes went up when Obama ran against, who was it, McCain the first time, right?
I think he ran against
It was because it was Romney for re-election.
I thought it was the other way around.
No, it was McCain the first time because it was McCain and Sarah Palin.
Oh,
then
you're right.
Then it was Romney and who was Romney's? I don't even remember. Wow. Anyways, so I don't know.
Voter turnout, just to put numbers to it.
Yeah.
2016 was 55.5%.
Okay,
2012 was 54.9.
That's surprising.
2008 was 58.2.
Wow.
2004 was 55.7 and 2000 was 50.3. So really we fluctuate around the 54%
Fair enough.
Since 2000.
I think people just need to just calm down. There are way too many people that consume media that tells them that the world is on fire every day. And they lose their goddamn minds. Just people need to relax.
The highest percentage that I'm seeing here, and granted, this is Wikipedia, but this graph looks like it's cited from the Bipartisan Policy Center, which I don't know. I guess I always take that with a grain of salt.
Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, you turds.
Oh, it was Paul Ryan?
Was it Paul Ryan?
Wow, it was, yeah.
I don't even remember that. Wow.
1876, 81.8%.
Yeah, but again, take that with a grain of salt. Who was allowed to vote in 1876?
I hear you, but of those people who were allowed to vote.
Yeah, but you're not even talking just white men. White men who were very privileged were voting in 1876. I mean, it might have been a bit more broad
anyone
than
want
that.
to guess who ran then?
1876? Millard Fillmore.
Nope.
I have no idea.
The Republican was Rutherford B. Hayes.
Hey.
The Democratic nominee was Samuel J. Tidden.
Was a name that will never again be pronounced after what you just said there.
So if we go from 1960, in the 1960s, we were at or over 60%.
Now that's impressive. That's a good turnout.
That was the high. That's essentially the height of modern U.S. history, what I would call modern U.S. history. After World War II, let's say. That was the height of voter turnout. It was 61% actually in 1964.
What was that race?
That race was Lyndon Johnson versus Barry Goldwater.
Huh.
61.9%.
What was going on in 64?
The presidential race.
Thanks for that, you goober. I'm saying in terms of... No, you know what? No, you've ruined it. We're moving past that.
He was voted in essentially right after JFK's assassination. JFK was assassinated the year before, and that was during his ramp up to re-election in 1964, and of course Lyndon B. Johnson.
God, imagine. I don't want to derail too much here, but imagine. I've thought about this. Imagine if Donald Trump was assassinated. I think that would tear this country in half. I think it genuinely would.
You think so? I don't think so.
I think that the right,
I think what would genuinely tear our country in half is
Mike Pence takes over.
I think what would genuinely tear our country in half is the questioning of the voting system and the
I agree with
legitimacy of
Cyril
how we
on
pick,
that one.
Yeah, people. If someone told you, if some legitimate sources came out tomorrow and said 6+ million people illegally voted somehow for Hillary Clinton and they don't know why or how, that just changes the game. That just changes the game.
We have never had, though,
and it would only drive people further in their corners.
Voter fraud. What?
I said it would only drive people further in their corners.
It definitely would. But that's never really happened on that scale in the United States. Not in terms of voter fraud. I don't think so.
And
that would be ludicrous.
And it's impossible.
Can you imagine what it would take to orchestrate that? That somebody would talk. Somebody would talk.
That's why it kind of is, once again, baffling that if the reason that Trump is scared to talk about Russian meddling in the election that year is because he thinks it delegitimizes him. It doesn't. It's impossible to hack our election system. It's very decentralized. It's impossible. You just can't do it on such a wide enough scale.
We're actually quite good at
so you can have confidence that the outcome that happened is one that should have happened. And I know that there was recounts in the close states, and everything was the way it is.
You know what's interesting though is
and you just don't have to be a little bitch.
Yeah, but Trump, and we know this for a fact, Trump actively consumes cable news television, which paints a very stark picture, depending on who you're watching, of his presidency. So that's very much the binoculars in which he sees the world. So he has to be very paranoid because that's all that's ever being talked about.
Well,
is the fucking Russians.
This is probably why he took back what he said. The link that I just posted. Fox and Friends turns on Trump. Oh no.
See, here's
could they?
You guys are talking about you
know you watched this. Trump watched that.
You guys were talking about the press conference. So instead of actually watching the press conference, I just Googled why was Trump's press conference bad? Why was Trump's press conference okay? I'm sorry, I don't know why I tripped over my own words.
Happens.
So the article that I have here from Fox News says, "Don't rush to judgment on the Trump-Putin summit. It will take months to clearly assess." And the first line here is reminding you, President Trump has once again shown that he does not take a conventional approach to diplomacy.
True.
This was written by Stephen Yates.
Fox News has once again shown that they literally will walk any tightrope to not sound like they are criticizing the president and at least only sound neutral.
There is one quote that he had that was quite nice, but it doesn't apply to him, but it definitely was nice. Trump said, "I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics." I still think he's bullshitting us, but that's quite a nice quote.
He read that off a sheet of paper.
Oh, he absolutely did. There's no way he wrote that. Or
No, I watched the video. Yeah, he read off a sheet of paper.
Of course he did, but it's still nice. Like, he's definitely got people behind the scenes who know how to spend it.
Away from him. You're right.
Well done. Well done. It doesn't apply to what he's doing right now at all, but it's still a nice quote, dude. Credit where credit's due, man. His shadow writers are great. His ghost writers.
Sorry. Well, I'd rather talk about policy, and we'll give credit when credit's due, but it hasn't come yet.
Again, I don't think this is a sinking moment for Trump. I think he's pretty immune. It's going to take something huge for him to actually lose his core support. But man, was this just disappointing. It was just disappointing to see all of this. Like, he clearly has, it's just, again, a huge show that he has no idea what he's doing.
I've been disappointed.
I'm actually impressed that he had the cojones to meet with Putin, but then I'm also disappointed that he just didn't realize the consequences of everything that he was saying.
You guys been getting paychecks the last couple months?
Huh?
Have you guys been getting paychecks the last couple months? Like paychecks from work?
Yeah.
You guys
yes,
been,
I do get paid.
You guys been getting taxed for Social Security and Medicare every time?
I haven't looked specifically, but I assume so.
Considering what I get paid and then what I actually get paid, I would also assume so.
So that tax cut that we gave to corporations last winter, why couldn't we just cut from the bottom up everybody's Social Security and Medicare taxes, put a little money back in our pocket? I don't understand. So I've been bitter since then. That was my point of that.
That was
I've been bitter for a long time. I've been bitter for a long time. He could have done a lot better for working class people already, and he hasn't. Okay.
It's just, again, I don't think this is a sinking point, but God, I watched this and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for our country. Like, Trump obviously has no idea what he's doing, and it's been obvious like that for a while, but man, was this just embarrassing, dude. The guy has no cojones. And then the moment he's not standing next to Putin, he tries to walk everything back. I mean, what a coward, man. What a coward. And again, I don't place this on his shoulders in terms of like malicious intent. I just place this on his shoulders in terms of him being incompetent. And it's just another show of him being incompetent. But it was just spectacularly incompetent. Anyways.
We'll see what happens.
Should we move on to the next article, or are we going to call it?
We'll be all right. We'll be all right, but I said really way earlier, and I still stand by it. Like, I'm also very worried about the mixing of like public and private interest in the Trump era, and what the residue that's going to leave behind.
You know what I do have to point out real quick that I find
because he does have a good chance at winning in 2020, no matter what. Someone needs to run against him that can do better and has a better vision, or he'll win for sure. So if we get 8 years of this mixing, it's just how much of that residue will be left behind. Go ahead, Caleb. Sorry.
No, it's all right. The chart that you posted there, I did not know that Clinton was indicted, or I don't know if that's.
Yeah, it all started with that.
4 times though. I didn't know it was 4 times.
It all started with the land, Arkansas land or something,
no.
right? No.
I'm just joking.
I was going to say the Monica Lewinsky thing. I think that came out of the Whitewater land purchasing something in Arkansas while he was governor investigation. And as special counsels go, they tend to be, if anything else arises, you can investigate that as well, which we've all come to, most of us, if you follow at least the news reports that come out on Mueller's reports, even semi-closely, you know that special counsels have broad authority. So that's how, they found out that, Clinton committed perjury by lying about not telling the truth about getting bejabbers in the White House. So it happens. And by the way, don't take those timelines lightly. Like that's years into investigation.
Right?
goes
No,
up to
no,
8.
I hear you. I hear
Oh,
It goes up
my
to
you.
8.
God.
That's crazy.
I'm just more upset
I
you
guess-
call them bejabbers.
I'm
You're allowed to be upset about
fully in support of the use of the term bejabbers.
that. Oh goodness.
I think the difference here, though, to Cyril's point earlier, is that the how important this is because it's an investigation into our election. You know, I guess I didn't take that into context as much as I should have. The weight of what that means for our society. You know, bravo to you, Cyril. Thank you.
And
pointing
well,
that out, 'cause I did.
by the way, I think we'll be
frustrated.
fine. By the way, I just
We'll be
get worried when I see stuff like this. But at the same time, like I said earlier, I do take
embarrassing.
solace in the fact that they are like because I see these indictments, I go, okay, they must understand how they did it, when they did it, figured it out, and I hope they're doing the right thing with that information. The government usually does. So whether or not we like that they can just automatically do that, they do.
Our government.
Right. And to protect us. Let's also make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
Because the lines can get blurred sometimes. But
Again, I think I'm just coming from a perspective of an ignorant person
Right.
in a world where there's just too much information, and the feeling is, what the fuck? Like, if there's a smoking gun, throw it out there. Let's go. Let's figure this shit out now. But to be
and there's
fair,
a lot of
there's a lot going on here. There's a ton going on here.
there's a lot of perspectives that you can take too. Like, it's good that Trump walked it back in a certain way because, like, you know, if his intention was to kind of lean on his Russian connections and take advantage of that and like warm up to them a little too much while they're still not doing really great with human rights, and this is how much blowback he gets that he has to walk it back. That's good, right? Like, that's good. Like, he took so much flack that he literally now it was the worst walk back I've ever seen. It was the most embarrassing. Like, you need to go watch the video. He like smacks the table in that way that like a child is apologizing about something that he doesn't want to apologize about. It's crazy. It's insane.
Like
But-
how Natalie does.
Yeah, it's I'm telling you, dude, it's bad. He like slaps the table just in
So
that
sad.
way. Did you watch it,
Very
Chad?
sad.
Because it's
I did.
oh, dude, it's bad. Like, it's
just
forced.
embarrassing.
It's so forced.
Like I'm embarrassed. I'm genuinely embarrassed.
Oh,
I've never
he
been
reads it
as
from the paper.
embarrassed
Oh my goodness.
when
It's
Trump
sad.
is on the world stage as until now. And I guess that's maybe I haven't been paying enough attention because like he's been to plenty of NATO summits and
It's crazy
otherwise
how-
that have been cringy. But man, he just looked like such a bitch next to Putin.
It's crazy.
Oh,
It's crazy how much he wears his emotions on his sleeve that tip his hand to the whole world. And he's the most powerful man in the world. And what I mean by that is, like, when he was reading, like, Chad saw the video of him reading the walking back statement. Like, it is no joke. Like, a child reading an apology letter that he doesn't want to read. No
say
joke.
sorry.
And I can read that body language, and I'm little old, I don't want to use that word, idiotic Cyril in the middle of nowhere that like doesn't know that much, self-admitted, and like I can tell that like he did not want to read that. It's like, come on, dude, do better. Jesus, do better. Control your emotions a little more. Like, God damn, it's fascinating to watch it unfold. So. Just pop your popcorn, and we'll come back to episode 45 next week, and I'll be triggered about more stuff that he did, I'm sure.
There you go.
But we should always, we stayed on good topic this time, and that was a good conversation. But you always want to limit them as much as possible.
Yeah.
So next week
I must thank you
Find it
guys
random.
for broadening my horizons and making me understand a bit more. Something that I'm going to think about this whole next week is what would be the implication? What would happen if the claim
Either
was
way.
that 1 million fake votes were submitted for Donald Trump, or 1 million fake votes were submitted for.
Right.
Because what was the margin of victory, as far as?
By the way,
I don't. It doesn't even have to be an amount that is large enough to change the election outcome. If there is enough distrust that can be like placed in enough people in this country in our election system, then it all goes straight to hell.
Right. So my question: can anyone lightly Google this one? What
What?
the margin of victory was in the popular vote?
It was like a little over
200,000.
No, 2
million.
Mm-hmm. Hang on. It was definitely a little over 2, so I'm not going to be misquoted on that, but I want to get the right number. I don't want to screw it up. To almost 3 million, not quite, 2.9 million.
So that's a pretty. I mean, what's percentage-wise? What's that margin? Does it say? What are you looking?
Trump got 46.1, Hillary got 48.2.
So 2%, 3%.
Yeah. 2.1%. Mm-hmm.
So what if somehow 2.1% of the vote was faked?
Right.
One way or the other.
Right. I mean, really, the question at this point is, what's the number? Because it doesn't need to be enough to sway it. What's the number that would, especially in these very tribal times, what's the number that would be enough to sway enough popular opinion about the way we elect our leaders to just like destabilize it enough? And now, look, I don't think it's going to happen.
you know what's interesting?
Just something
though?
to think about, because
It is. It's something that's gonna. I'm gonna rack my brain.
because
is why I appreciate seeing them indict people, because I know, like, hey, they figured it out and on some level and caught them, so it's good.
Right. No, they must have. I mean, a grand jury handed out these indictments, which means there must have been a judge approved these cases to go to a jury, and then the grand jury saw that there was enough evidence for indictments.
I'd like to think that the U.S. has the best coders in the world, but I'm sure that's not true.
Interesting thing about that is one of the reasons why we don't. Is because in order to join a government agency, you can't do drugs, and a lot of people who are really good at coding smoke a shitload of weed.
Sure.
Anyway, continue, Chad.
I believe it.
Also, legalize weed and you'll improve our electoral college. That should be the title.
Excuse me, what?
That should be the title of this episode.
Take a breath. Hey, take a breath.
Dude, that's clickbaity enough to work, and we just justified it enough for it to be warranted. So,
although you have to get through like an hour's worth of bullshit to get to that.
Well, but it's there. Congratulations, listener. You found that nugget. And now you're disappointed.
Thanks for joining us.
I think I will say,
see
though.
us next week.
Oh,
after Chad says his last words. Go ahead. Chad, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment, because I've said this before. I'm so very intrigued at how evenly our elections pan out in this country. So the idea that you would only need so many votes in so many particular locations to sway it, that is concerning. But yeah. Until next week.
Decentralized enough, so don't worry about it.